This is Everybody Pulls the Tarp with your host, Andrew Moses. Each week, Andrew talks with Olympians, pro athletes, TV stars, Grammy winners, best-selling authors, CEOs, and other high performers to uncover their success secrets.
My guest is Washington Commanders running back Austin Ekeler.
Every day we write a page of our life. The best thing is you have the pen in your hand.
Three-time Olympic gold medalist Tessa Virtue. Welcome back to Everybody Pulls the Tarp.
Thanks for thinking of me, and I'm a big fan of the podcast and of yours. So anytime you text or call, I'm here.
Mike Mills from REM.
The key to that was realizing at some point fairly early on that this was probably our life's work.
Every conversation is jam-packed with inspiration and actionable ideas.
My guest is 2023 WNBA Coach of the Year, Stephanie White.
The hardest thing for a coach is trying to prioritize how much time you put in one area or another.
Former MLB player, coach, and manager Clint Hurdle.
That is the best title of any podcast out there in America, and the content matches up to it. Andrew, you do a fantastic job. I'm a big fan. Keep up the great work.
World-renowned organizing expert Shira Gill.
You can improve your life simply by removing things.
Get ready for a behind-the-scenes look at the techniques, processes, and mindsets powering the world's most successful people.
Let's go. Hi, friends, and welcome back to Everybody Pulls the Tarp. This week, my guest is best-selling author Jane Healey. So let me tell you about Jane. She is the author of numerous books, including The Beantown Girls, which is a Washington Post and Amazon Charts bestseller. And her latest book, The Women of Arlington Hall, was just released in August. Jane is also the host of her own podcast, Historical Happy Hour, where she interviews fellow historical fiction authors about their latest novels. In the conversation you are about to hear, Jane and I explore her career and the techniques and mindsets that have made her one of the best at her craft. This episode is filled with so many powerful ideas. We explore how to find glimmers of hope amidst rejection, how to structure stories, what Jane writes in the margin when she doesn't like what she's written, why she doesn't read one-star reviews, and so much more. And in one of my favorite parts of our conversation, Jane shares an incredible story about how she connected with a publisher that she had long aspired to work with and ultimately broke through as an author. I'll leave it at that for now and let you hear that full story in Jane's words. But I will just say this. Jane's story, it's a powerful reminder that we have the power to create our own luck. We just need to be willing to work hard, take risks, and put ourselves out there. I will be thinking about my conversation with Jane for a long time to come, and hope you take away as much from this one as I have. And as always, I love to hear your favorite takeaways from each episode. So reach out on Instagram at AndrewMoses123 or find me on LinkedIn to tell me what you think. Oh, and one more thing. This podcast is presented solely for educational and entertainment purposes. It is not intended to be a substitute for the advice of a physician, psychotherapist, or other qualified professional. So, let's pull the tarp and get straight to Jane Healey. Where I want to begin, so has writing and creating always been a part of you? Is this something that you were doing as a kid, or did it spark an interest later in life?
It absolutely was something I've been doing since I was a kid. I've always wanted to write novels. That was something from like a very young age. I thought that would be the most amazing thing. But I grew up, I was a pragmatic kid. I didn't know anyone who wrote novels for a living as a job. And so after college, I ended up getting into high tech because I was a solid writer. I've always loved to write. And I always tell young people who want to write novels, I'm like, well, at first you got to have some sort of something that pays the bills and pays off your student loans and all those things. So they always need good communicators in tech. And I ended up a product manager. I did a lot of writing in that job. And then when my girls were born, they're 18 and 22 now. And I pivoted to doing freelance writing. So I had private clients. I wrote for magazines. I wrote for newspapers, pretty much anything I could get my hands on in terms of work. And that was the time, I think, because when you have kids, you kind of reevaluate your life and your goals. And I'm like, well, if you're going to do this like novel writing thing, you actually have to write novel or try to write. And so that's when I really started to take it seriously.
So what did that look like when you began to take it seriously?
Excellent question. So I was freelancing for Boston Magazine, and there was a group of women there. One of them was my editor. There were some other writers, and we formed a writing group where we'd share pages of fiction work that we were working on. One of them was really into poetry. Another one was into fiction and also cookbook writing. And so that was, I started sharing my pages and getting real feedback. I started attending workshops. I mean, I had little girls, so I didn't have a lot of time. So I do one night workshops, one day workshops on the weekends, whenever I could squeeze it in, to really learn the craft of writing long form fiction, which the learning curve, I was like, oh, I'm a decent writer. How hard could this be? And it's so different than any other writing I had ever done. And it takes time. It takes a lot of time to learn how to do this.
What was the biggest difference between, let's call it like technical business writing and then writing fiction novels?
One thing that I tell, and I also tell young writers, is one thing I wish I had paid attention to and understood the importance of when I was first starting out is story structure. Like writing a story, you have to have a beginning, a middle, and end. Every story has a structure, whether it's intentional from the writer or not. But if you are intentional about that up front, if you figure out how to write a story that has all the pieces, then your work will flow better. You'll learn faster. The learning curve will be a little bit shorter. Story structure is huge when it comes to writing any sort of fiction, but especially novels.
So how quickly did you go from those one day, one evening workshops, trying to figure it all out, to your debut novel, The Saturday Evening Girls Club?
Oh, about 10 years. So not very quickly.
Take me through those 10 years.
Yes. So started doing that. I had written an article about Saturday Evening Girl pottery. It's this pottery that's highly collectible now. It's antique. Little tiny pieces like teacups are worth like thousands of dollars. And it was part of the arts and crafts movement of the early 1900s. And it was this group of women in Boston's North End at the turn of the 20th century. They were Italian and Jewish girls who made this pottery. And so I wrote this article for Boston Magazine about it. And I said to my husband, I'm like, oh, I think this is it. This is my first book. This is the one. Again, how hard can it be? Like 10 years later. So I wrote that draft, and I say to people, like, I didn't get my MFA in creative writing, but that process of writing The Saturday Evening Girls was kind of like my MFA. It was how I learned to write a book, and I made all of the mistakes and got lots of somewhat painful feedback at times, because that's what I needed to grow and be better. And the first time I tried to get it published was like 2015, and I stopped counting at like 75, 100 rejections. It was too depressing. And then in 2017, I took it out because immigrant fiction was having a moment. And so I was like, well, maybe I'll try again one more time. I read the manuscript. I still believed in it. I didn't make many editorial changes at that point. And that's when it finally happened for me. But it was a solid 10 years of work.
I always say that it takes 10 years to become an overnight success.
Oh, it's absolutely true. And I will say, I mean, that was working on it not full time because I had little girls and I was freelancing and doing all the things. But yeah, it's so true. Like, I'm sure you've talked to a lot of authors. I talk to a lot of authors. You see these books that blow up, and oftentimes the writer has been working for years before it happens, whether it's because they had other books come out first, or they've just been working on their craft and trying to knock down the door to get published.
How did you navigate those? I know you say you lost count after 75 or 100 rejections. How did you grapple with those?
Yeah, writing is such a personal thing. I mean, even writing fiction, it definitely stung every time. One part of that process, though, for me, was there were some like glimmers of hope in some of these rejections, where these agents would ask for a full manuscript, which is huge. When an agent asks for a full manuscript, it doesn't happen often. It means they're really serious about considering the work. And so I had many requests for the full manuscript. I had some really nice feedback. I had some really not so nice feedback. But, so I had it was really difficult. And that's why I had to kind of, when I hit that number of rejections, I had to say, well, maybe this isn't the one. This isn't the book. I'm going to put it on a shelf and work on some other things. But there were glimmers and kind of things telling me that I was on the right path. When people were asking for full or partial manuscripts and giving me positive feedback, I was like, okay, I think I'm not that far off. I think I can get there.
That's an important idea. And that's a common through line through a lot of the conversations I've had with many of the world's most successful people from all different crafts and disciplines, is this idea that even amidst rejection or what some would call failure, right? If you draw upon those glimmers of hope, as you described it, if you draw upon the little win or find a little win inside what seems like a bigger loss, there's an opportunity to take something and move forward and maybe motivate yourself or learn something along the way. So you talked about immigrant fiction starting to have a little bit of a moment. Did you sense that? Did someone come to you that had read the manuscript before and say, Jane, this might be the moment. Let's dust this thing off. Talk about that.
Yeah. So my publishing story from that point on, from getting that book out in 2017, is kind of weird. Usually it's you pitch an agent, the agent signs you, the agent pitches the publisher. And my path was a little bit different. So what happened was around 2016, I went to see the movie Brooklyn, which is based on the book by Colm Tobin, who's amazing. I'm not trying to compare myself to him, but so that's a very classic immigrant story, very similar to what I was writing on the Saturday Evening Girls Club. Orphan Train was another big book at the time. Hotel on the Corner of Bitter and Sweet was another one by Jamie Ford. So I felt like the timing was right. I mean, publishing, like anything, is luck and timing sometimes. And so I started getting my list together of agents and getting my letters to send out to agents. And there was this program called Kindle Scout by Amazon. Basically it was like a contest, and it was crowdsourced publishing where you would send them your manuscript and they would put it up on a website and people would vote on whether they thought it should be published or not. And after 30 days, they pick some winners every month. And if you won, you'd get the digital book deal. But I never wanted just the digital book deal. I wanted the real book deal. But I was I've got nothing to lose. This manuscript's been sitting here. So I put it up on Kindle Scout. And the night I put it up on Kindle Scout, because I knew agents and editors looked at this site. It's no longer, it was very I think they did it for 6 months or something. I knew agents and editors looked at this Kindle Scout for projects. And I said to my husband,
they would scour it for projects and authors.
Would. Yeah, I knew that was happening on social media. So I said to my husband, I'm only doing this because I want Danielle Marshall of Lake Union Publishing to see this and give me a book deal. She was the head of Union Publishing, my publishing company now at the time, editorial director. And we kind of laughed about it. I'm like, no, because this is historical fiction. This is book club fiction. This is a perfect fit for Lake Union. And so I put it up there. 30 days go by. I win Kindle Scout. I get the digital book deal, but I was still oh, that's nice. I was super excited, obviously, but I was also really want the real deal. And then 2 days later, Danielle Marshall called me and said, I would like to give you a book deal. I would like to work with you at Lake Union Publishing. Would you be interested?
Don't sign this Amazon Scout deal.
Yeah,
come with us.
They're come with us. And I've burst into tears because it's oh, I couldn't even believe it. I could not believe it.
That is an incredible story. It reminds me of they talked about years ago with American Idol. You almost didn't want to win American Idol. You wanted to get spotted by another agent so that you didn't have to do it the American Idol way. And it worked for you. You put it up there, you took a risk, you took a chance, and the dream scenario played out exactly as you had hoped.
Yeah, it was crazy. And then after that, I signed with an agent. So I kind of went backwards in terms of process for the publishing industry.
Talk about marketing the book, getting it out. Take me through that.
Yeah, I think that now more than ever, even 2017 was a while ago now more than ever, authors have to be entrepreneurs. I think of it as I call it Jane Healey Inc. And you have to, in order to be successful, some authors don't have to do this, but I think most authors have to do some sort of self-promotion, social media marketing, whether it's building a newsletter, obviously a website, picking what you're comfortable with on social media. I don't love, like a lot of authors, I don't love promoting myself and my own books, but you have to do it. I like right now, my agent and editor are like, you got a book coming out, Jane. Like you gotta like start posting more about your books and less about other people's books. So I've been doing a little more of that these days. But yeah, it's a hustle. The hustle is real. That aspect of it is super challenging.
Your latest book, The Women of Arlington Hall, released here in August of 2025. Jane, I know readers are excited to take it all in. I am curious, when you think about kind of the journey from that first book to where you are today, how have you changed most as an author from those 75 rejections, posting to Amazon Scout, to today where you have multiple novels, you have a bestseller? Talk about that.
Yeah, I think that after I wrote The Saturday Evening Girls Club and it came out in 2017, I really wanted to write that next novel to kind of use everything I had learned in the first novel, learn from my mistakes, and write a bigger story. I think since Saturday Evening Girls Club, I'm proud of it, but it's a quieter story. It's a smaller story, 1 year, Italian and Jewish neighborhood in the Boston's North End. And I wanted to write a bigger story with higher stakes. And I think since then, my stories are bigger with higher stakes. I always, with each novel, try to find an angle of it that is going to challenge me and scares me a little bit, because I think that's how you grow. So like with the second novel, The Beantown Girls, I'd always been fascinated with World War II. My grandfather was a firefighter on the Navy ships in World War II off the coast of Africa. And so I wanted to write a World War II story, but I knew I wanted it centered around women. And so that's how I ended up writing about the Red Cross Clubmobile girls of World War II. And so, yes, from there, I've always kind of tried to find an angle in the book project that I'm working on that challenges me and scares me, and that the stakes of the story are much higher in one way or another than my first novel.
So well said there, Jane. Regardless of what we're doing, how do you find something that scares you just the right amount, but doesn't scare you to the point of overwhelm?
Yeah, well, it's funny. I think that, so for instance, The Women of Arlington Hall, it's about female code breakers in the early days of the Cold War in Washington, D.C. And this group of women, they had to take a secrecy oath, so few people know of their story. And they were responsible for helping crack the codes on and reading the Russian telegrams and tracking down the Russian spies in the US that were stealing atomic secrets. So it's very much inspired by true stories. I found this article about one of these women. She was 99, I think, at the time. The article's by the historian Liza Mundy. In 2018, it was in the Smithsonian Magazine. And at the time, I was like, oh my God, these women were amazing.
All right, everyone. We'll get back to the conversation momentarily. But first, I want to tell you about my free weekly email newsletter, Tarp Pullers. Each week, I share an uplifting and inspirational tarp pulling story that is sure to brighten your day. And I also highlight some of the most powerful ideas I've learned on my journey talking to 200 and counting of the world's top performers. The newsletter is short, concise, and a reader recently told me this. She said it makes her day every time it hits her inbox. Go to everybodypullsthetarp.com/newsletter to sign up today.
Code breaking is super complex. And that part of it scared me. The history, because it's lesser known, scared me. But a part of it was like, how do I tell a story about code breaking? Not only is it complex, but it's really tedious and sometimes very boring. Like, so how do I tell this story and make sure the stakes are high? People are interested. I find that people, like, probably you've learned this in podcasts, people like learning about what people do for work, right?
Yeah.
But code breaking, like I said, it can be tedious and boring for hours at a time. So I was like, how do I tell this story, making people understand what this work was and how complex and fascinating it was, but take out the boring parts. And so I sat on that idea, like that book idea had to marinate for a long time before I could figure out my way into the story.
I'd imagine that once you marinate on that and figure it out, it still has to be a little bit of a tug and pull as you're going through that process.
Absolutely. And So, the first few chapters of the book, definitely, because you can't just be like, oh, she was a code breaker, blah, blah, blah. And like talk about her life. Like you have to show they say show, don't tell. You have to show how she was a code breaker, what the work involved, because that's part of the interesting part about it. So that's when you rely on like my editor. I was like, if I nerded out way too much on the code breaking, if I'm going to put people to sleep, you got to tell me, but I think I got the balance right. So that's when it becomes a collaborative process, like what to keep in, what to take out. That's when the editorial process comes in.
So we've talked a lot about kind of the years leading up to your debut novel, how you were developing your craft as a writer and a novelist. But take me through now. Take me behind the scenes when you're working and you're creating. Paint the scene for me. What does the creative process look like for you, Jane?
Yeah, it's really seasonal. Like it really depends on where I'm at. So when I am trying to pick, the way it works with my publisher is like I'll pitch them an idea, but I have to give them like proof of concept for the next book. So that's where I'm at right now. Like I'm trying to research the next book. I have to show them like the first 30 pages and a synopsis, and then they agree or disagree to go to contract, and I'll write that book. I'm also in the middle of launching a book. So I'm kind of all over the place with that stuff right now. When I'm on deadline, when I go to contract and we agree to a deadline, I'm really disciplined in terms of the work. And I respond better, I found, to deadlines than not. So I will map out like, okay, I have 5 months. Here's how many words I have to write every day, Monday through Friday. And if I don't hit that word count by Friday, I have to work that weekend to catch up. And that's how I'll hit that deadline. And it is, I think that a lot of people think of, oh, I would love to write fiction. I'd love to write novels. It's so amazing. But like, it is hardcore work. Like the authors I admire the most are the ones who put in the work year after year and put out the books and understand that it takes time and thought and quiet. And I think the world we're in now doesn't allow for that sometimes. You have to really make that time for yourself.
I'm so fascinated by this idea that you create a set of inputs that you've got to hold yourself to. I mean, you could look at it as an output, X amount of pages per week or per day, but really what you're committing to is the input that you're going to create. You put that work in for however long it takes. How do you know if a week is going particularly well versus a week that's not going particularly well, aside from the page count, or the word count? Talk about that for a moment.
Yeah, I think that authors and creators talk about that flow state where you get in and you're just like, the hours go by, you don't even know how much time has passed, and you're just cranking and you're in the scene and you know exactly where everything's going and it's clicking and you know that there's going to be minimal editing on this scene or this chapter. That rarely happens. Like that, when that happens, that's amazing. It happens once in a while, but oftentimes it's just like, you have to, like, there's a lot of mental tricks. I know I'm not the only one that I have to do to like sit down and get the words down. And one of them is I write little notes in the margins, like, this is crap, but you'll fix it later. Like, this is terrible, but we will fix it later. That's one of them. Another one is like, I often stop writing like mid scene so that I'm not like staring at the blank page of chapter 10 when I sit down the next day. Things like that. So it's like, okay, I'm like somewhere in here and I have to keep going. Things like that.
What about those days that you wake up and you don't feel like doing the work? I've talked to a lot of professional athletes and Olympians, and that they'll say, look, when it comes from a high performance perspective in sport, you're really only at your best in terms of how you feel, in terms of your energy and your body, 1 out of every 10 days. So like 1 out of every 10 days, you are like in that, maybe what you described as that flow state, where you can get into that flow state. And then 1 out of 10 days, like you got nothing. If you're a pitcher, you can't get anybody out. If you're a hitter, you can't make contact on that baseball. And then it's really about, like, success is really defined, they'll say, by what you do in those 8 other days when you're not at your best, but you're not at your worst, but you find a way. So talk about that. Like, most days you probably wake up and don't feel your best, don't feel like you're going to get into that flow state. How do you get yourself started?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent analogy. I think that many days you're just not feeling it, whether it's you got personal stuff going on, you're not feeling good physically, like whatever it is. But the way I think about it is like, it's a non-traditional job, but it's my job. Like I've already gotten paid in advance for that at work. And so I'm like, they are paying me and they are depending on me to deliver a product. At the end of the day, yes, it's creative, it's a book, but it's a product. And a lot of people are depending on me to deliver this product on time and relatively decent quality, even though it's not the final draft. But so yeah, I think of it in that way. Like, this is my job. People are depending on me. I already got paid a chunk of money for this. And I'm going to sit down and I'm going to plow through. And if I'm not feeling it, I'm going to write, 500 words. And if I get through the 500 words, I'm going to try for another 500. It's just like trying and just doing the work day in and day out, even when you're not feeling it. I think that's a huge part of the job, having the discipline to do that.
I think it's so true. People have told stories about how Jerry Seinfeld would write his comedy over the years, and he would have this big calendar and a Sharpie. And if he wrote for an hour, he would put a big X with the black Sharpie onto the hard copy calendar. And he didn't care if the jokes were funny, if the material was going to be useful. All he cared about was, did I write an hour today?
Yes.
And that was a success. And the other thing that he did or didn't do, I guess you could say, is he wouldn't share it with anybody for 48 hours because he felt as though if I sat down and I wrote for an hour, I don't want somebody at the coffee shop in 15 minutes to tell me that I think that something that I think is a great idea that I poured my heart and soul into over the past hour is actually not very funny. So he would actually hold things back and not ask for feedback for a number of days. Take me through that process for you. How do you go about getting feedback on your work as you're writing?
That has definitely evolved over time. Now, I don't want to ruin the mojo when I'm writing. So often, when I'm working on the proposal, I just work on it on my own in my bubble, and I don't show anyone until I show my agent. And then she'll give me feedback, and then we send it off to the editor. And then with my, in terms of drafting now, I don't show anyone. I don't have beta readers. I don't have early readers. I just send it to my editor when I feel like it's the best I can possibly make it. Because again, there's something, and I think what you said about Seinfeld touches a little on this. If you share it too early with the world, it kind of takes away the sparkle. I just need to hold it back until I feel like it's ready to be shared and it's the best I can possibly make it. And also with that point about waiting 48 hours, it's absolutely true. I'll write a chapter and then I'll go back to it maybe a week or two later, and you see things that can make it better. You'll see things that aren't working at all because you have that clarity and distance from it. And I think that's really important too.
I love and I'm sure when you go back to it, you'll see those notes in the margins as you talked about. This is crap, but you'll fix it later, and it brings a little smile to your face. I want to double click into the idea of stopping mid-scene. That's an idea that I've heard from other authors as well. And everybody I talk to, you're kind of either in one camp or the other. Some people say, I need to get to the end of a scene. I need to get to a logical, natural stopping point. Or they'll do what you describe, which is kind of stop short. And then I know that tomorrow I have kind of the place to begin to get the wheels turning. Is that something that you learned from someone else? Is that something that you tested a little bit on your own and began to kind of find that it would work for you? Talk about that.
I think a little bit of both. I'd heard of authors doing that before. And especially when you want to do this as a career, when you want to write more than one book, you try to pick up tips and tricks along the way to make your life a little bit easier. And I think that definitely stopping mid-scene is better sometimes for the momentum of the next day. Because you're like, well, I don't have to start from scratch with a brand new scene and dive in. I'm kind of halfway here. Some stuff is already moving around, and that will help me push me forward.
I find that this shows up through a lot of different contexts in my life. I find that just by writing a to-do list the night before makes the start to my day so much more efficient and kind of less resistance that you have to break through. The other thing I've noticed is I'll get up a lot of times really early. I've shared this with listeners in the past. A lot of times I'll get up really early before my family is up on a Sunday morning, And that's when I'll actually write a lot of the introductions and recaps that listeners hear on the podcast for episodes that we've already recorded, but where the episode hasn't been released yet. And I'll find that if that night before, if I was writing the intro to your episode, if I just open up that document and write Jane Healey at the top the night before, it seems easier in the morning to create that intro and tell the story about the story we're about to share. It's amazing how just a little, you called it, I forget what you called it before, like a little mind trick or a little mind hack, right? Those little things can make a big difference.
Oh, that's so true. And I use a lot of, you might probably heard of it, a lot of authors use Scrivener, which is kind of like Microsoft Word on steroids. And so it allows you to have this note card view of each of your chapters or each of your scenes. And when I finish a scene or a chapter, I like check it off with a new color, like usually purple or pink. And it's so satisfying. Like that type of stuff. It's like, oh, progress. You know what I mean? It's so true. I think that I am not a social psychologist, but I think there is a lot of things that you can do to be productive like that and then help you kind of move along even on the days you're not feeling it.
In addition to your writing and writing your own novels, Jane, you host your own podcast, the Historical Happy Hour podcast, where you interview fellow historical fiction authors about their latest novels. I am curious, what is one or two really meaningful things that you've learned about the writing process from your experience interviewing so many other authors in your genre?
That's such a good question. I think one of the things I've learned is that there's no right or wrong way to write a novel. Like however you get it done is the right way for you. Like everyone has a different way. Some people, I plan and plot things out almost maniacally. And then I have friends who just sit down at the computer every morning and kind of like go with the flow. It's called pantsing, writing by the seat of your pants versus plotting. There's no wrong way to write a novel. It's just whatever works for you is the best way. Another thing that I've definitely learned is publishing. There's writing and the writing process, and then there's a publishing process. And publishing is absolutely about persistence. It's absolutely about knocking on doors and doing the work and becoming better at what you do. Because the authors that I know that are the most successful just kept going when other people did not, and are the best at their craft and also highly successful as published authors.
Well, your story is a testament to the idea of persistence and relentlessness and continuing to move forward. I mean, you described it earlier, 75, 100 rejections. You lost count, as you put it. And then eventually you had the breakthrough. What about criticism and doubt? If there's a review that's less than favorable, or if somebody on social media says they didn't like this or they didn't agree with that, how do you process those? And is that something that you've gotten better at over your career?
Yeah. So, I mean, well, one thing is like, and I think it's refreshing talking to other writers about this too, is while you're writing, you go through this, the fear and uncertainty and doubt on your shoulder never leaves. It's always there. I mean, I just finished writing my 5th novel. And even with that one, I had these moments of angst of like, can I even do this? How did I do this before? I don't even know. And that you've got to learn to kind of like put that in a box and just do the work. So there's that aspect of it. And then in terms of reviews and outside, because it's really, I'll read reviews at when a book first comes out, I read them and I kind of see like where the wind is blowing, like what's the positives, what's the negatives, there's what the trend is for the reviews. Like thankfully, knock on wood, most of my books have been well reviewed overall. But everyone, like I have 1-star reviews, everyone gets 1-star reviews. And I've found that I don't read them anymore because I could read like 100 5-star reviews and then I read that 1-star review and it just ruins my week. And it like gets in my head and I get angry. And my husband reads all my reviews and he rarely tells me about the 1-star ones, but he reads them all. I just kind of read them at the beginning to see what things are trending, and then from there try to avoid reading like the 1-star, 2-star reviews.
So in addition to your persistence, which is obviously a huge, huge part of your story, as we've noted on numerous occasions in our conversation, and avoiding reading those 1-star reviews, what would you say is like one, maybe little thing, maybe a big thing that has just really had a profound impact on your success?
In terms of what exactly? Do you mean like?
I think anything in terms of your process, your mindset, your philosophy, anything really that you would attribute to having like really like this outsized impact on your success as a writer?
I think one thing I always say is like, I'll never be the most talented writer in the world, but I've always had a really good work ethic. And I think that people underestimate having a really strong work ethic in this industry. Like you just do the work every day, make a schedule, like do all the things, all the little mind tricks and things you need to do to get the work done. And that is, I think that's been a big part of it. Just having a really button chair, as they say, like get your butt in the chair and do the work every day or whenever you can. And that's been a huge part of it.
Jane, I have enjoyed this conversation so much. I've learned a ton from you. I think there's so many actionable ideas that you have shared that all of us can implement in our own lives, regardless of what we do. And for that, I'm forever grateful. There is no question in my mind that you are a tarp puller, certified member of the Everybody Pulls the Tarp family. You do the little things, the nitty gritty. You've got that extraordinary work ethic to make things happen. And obviously, you've persisted through challenges and overcome hurdles to get to where you are today. Thank you so much for being a tarp puller. And thank you for spending a little bit of time with me this week. All right, Jane, we'll have to do a part 2 again sometime.
Absolutely, Andrew. This was delightful. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you. We'll talk again soon. Thank you for joining me this week. Be sure to subscribe in your favorite podcast app so you can catch all of our upcoming episodes. And if you are like me and want a world full of tarp pullers, then leave a review to help others find us. You can also follow me on Instagram at AndrewMoses123 and sign up for my email newsletter at everybodypullsthetarp.com/newsletter. I'll share tips and insights to help you achieve maximum success and happiness. Until next time, keep pulling the tarp.